And then, when you first heard about fast track, and then this was going to be only about speed, not about distance, not about time, anything like that, what were your thoughts there?
We were doing it about once a week. We just, on Wednesdays, we'd meet up and we'd do it, and a bunch of the Outrigger kids would jump in and chase it too. And it was interesting. I'm almost as fast on the stand-up as I am in the OC1.
I was actually kind of excited. There's not a lot of competitions, virtual or real life, that are based purely on speed. In paddling, not in running, not in anything really, because it is hard to measure a top velocity without considering the factor of time, right? It's always over a certain distance. It's always speed over distance, or over distance and resulting in a time. So I was intrigued because, being kind of a naturally fast twitch muscle athlete that enjoys heavy lifting and working out in the gym, I was like, yeah, I want to see how fast I could get my board up to. But now, having done it multiple weeks in a row, there's so many variables and so many factors, and it's not as cut and dry and as easy as I guess I had hoped.
It's pretty epic. These virtual events are really hard in a lot of senses, and it's pretty straightforward. I think it's the most fair way to approach a virtual race, and for the most part, it's been pretty fun and exciting, especially coming into the tail end of the holding period.
So when you started, what was before your first run ever, what did you think your top speed was going to be compared to what you've, over the couple of weeks you've been doing this, got your top speed to?
So I went back through all of my sprint efforts from the APP tour last year, and we had salt water, we had fresh water, we had some with a little bit of current, some without. So I went back through the data on those races and I checked my top speed, and it was an 8.6. And I mean, that's with these women to the left and the right of you. Your adrenaline's pumping, my nutrition's on point, I've peaked for that event. So I thought it was pretty safe to assume that that's an accurate representation of my top speed. So I set the goal of 9 miles an hour based on my top speed from the APP World Tour last year being an 8.6.
The last time I did a sprint where I recorded it like that for max speed was, I think 2014 at the Lost Mills race, when they used to have the time course. And I remember on my Garmin, it was an average of 9.4 for 200 meters, but the max speed was 11.9. And that's, the old V3, 24 inches wide and like a 79-inch, 80-inch paddle. So I was hoping that I could get close to that, knowing, that's a little bit younger, but I'm a little more experienced. And then the other one is recognizing that I didn't have to hold it for 200 meters for a time. So I could, in 50 meters, the hard part was getting my top speed before 50 meters was done. Because you jump up, you don't want to expend all your energy, but then you finally get rolling, and then I'm looking at the end of the course going, uh-oh, I better top out right here. And it was, I was hoping to get into the 11.9 again, and I was getting pretty close, but the first couple of times it's just weird because we haven't been training, we haven't been sprinting, so saw a lot of high 9s and low 10s and a whole lot of heart rate. So I was like, that's a lot of effort. I was expecting a little more, and by the third or fourth week, we started to get that sprint fast twitch muscle. We started to figure out the board a little bit, and then Rylan and I kept fighting over who got the good board. So we finally just dealt it, hey, we'll do 4 on one and 4 on the other. And basically, then it turned into, well, I'll go on the canoe for 4 and film you, and you go on the good board, and then we'll switch.
The first session that I brought the GoPro down and was expecting to get a time, it was the actual first time I did it. No, it wasn't on the first run. I had to do about 10 or 12 50-meter sprints. I had my watch basically just set on 50 meters, 0.03 miles, and it would beep as soon as I went that 50 meters. Took a 7-minute break, rested, long rest in between so that each one could be really good. And it wasn't until like the 8th or 9th sprint that I actually got that 11.9 speed on.
Like we all know, yes, you need to be healthy, you need to be training like this, whatever, but it's really come down to, like you said, like buff the board or use this kind of fin or that kind of blade, and then where your hand is, like it's really micro things that you do that gives you that extra half a mile or mile of speed.
It is, but at the same time, it's the combination of all the micros. You know, you could change one thing and it adds a fraction of a second, but if you change 10 things, 10 fractions might equal 1 full second, and that's where the magic happens. Especially, I mean, when you watch these finals in the sprints and even in a distance race of like 8 miles, when the noses on the board are inches and they have to do these photo finishes, it really does make a difference. And to focus, and that's the one thing I think is most important for athletes and for everyone in life, right, is start cultivating your focus, because if you can focus on having the hand here and increasing the stroke rates, it takes full focus to do all those micro things. And when you focus and all the micros come together, you got the macro change.
For sure. There's a few little things I played around with. I actually did get a solid week of kind of just training and no GPS, just kind of a timer and no GoPro. And those times, those sessions that I was doing, those 30-second all-out sprints, I was finding 2 big things that really helped me, and it was position of my board. So not having it perfectly set straight out towards the ocean. I paddle and start on my left, and that was my strong side. And with that short of a sprint, you're not really switching. So I had my angle of my board towards the left so that by the time I got my board to top speed or in a straight line, it gave me 5 or 6 extra strokes on that left side before having either ease off it or try to take a counter J stroke or even having a switch. So that was able to, not only get a nice, line towards the sprint, and that's what I do most of my APP sprints to begin with. So it was pretty key. And then like April said, short paddle, huge blade. I had an extra large Lima and pretty much the exact height as my body. So my top of my handle was right at my forehead, a little bit over my forehead level. And that's just to get pure power and not necessarily that full stroke from nose to tail, but just turning over the paddle, trying to keep the cadence up. And then on top of that, keeping my feet light. I know it's a weird sensation because you're really trying to pile drive all that weight onto the front and into the catch of the stroke. But I was trying to just keep my feet light in order to keep my board light and therefore a little bit faster.
I think a lot of people really tune into this just because it is something that doesn't take a lot of time, doesn't take a lot of effort, and because you're filming it and it's so short, you go home, you have a few weeks to think about it, and you look at the video, you're like, you know what? I can do this better. I can definitely, maybe not go out drinking the night before, maybe, get a couple hours of sleep, maybe just practice once or twice and then try again. But it's been real enjoyable. I know a lot of people have a lot of film fast tracks that they haven't turned in because they're not quite as pretty as the good one we post.